Sometimes you need a hook to succeed in life. For example, Michael Jackson had his signature, "Hee-hee." Apple stuffed an operating system in a mobile to create the famous iPhone phenomenon, and Volkswagen brand Cupra from Spain just might have Australia's first ever EV hot hatch, presenting the Cupra Born. Born to be alive. Due out in March next year, it's certainly one way to stand out in a swarm of EV activity. Currently, no pun intended, there are no like-sized or like-priced EV rivals, with the coming larger and much more potent Hyundai Ioniq 5N and Kia EV6 GT breaking into six figures. Speaking of pricing, Cupra might be Volkswagen's sporty brand that's very obviously infused with Latin flair and youthful attitude, but there's also a value story unfolding here. The only Born model for now is the big battery 77 kWh version, kicking off from a highly competitive $59,990 before on-road costs, making it the least expensive long-range EV on the market right now. Given that Cupra is an offshoot of Spanish brand Seat, you might remember them from the 1990s with models like the Ibiza and Cordoba, the sharp pricing might not come as any big surprise. Porsche Taycan aside, as the first Volkswagen Group EV to reach Australia, the Born might be its most historic model since the first Volkswagen Beetle landed here 70 years ago in 1953. With all that in mind, and to find out if the Born is any good, let's take a sneak peek and a brief drive on a private racetrack in rural Victoria. That $60,000 pricing means the Born costs some $4,000 more than BMW's British Mini Cooper SE, which is substantially smaller, less powerful, and unable to go nearly as far on a single charge, as well as $4,000 less than the Polestar 2 Standard from China, offering broadly similar outputs and ballpark range. While not outstandingly so, the Cupra is reasonably well equipped, bringing 7 airbags including a front center item, a top view 360-degree camera, adaptive cruise control, keyless entry and start, digital instrumentation, and 19-inch alloys. An optional performance package does bring larger wheels, wider tyres, adaptive chassis control including trick electronic dampers and a stability control off function, but collectively it costs $2,600 more and drops the range down to just 475 kilometres. Buyers choosing the $2,900 interior package will score a bunch of extras, including a Beats audio system upgrade and fancier seats with heating and massaging functionality. Note though that both option packs lose the middle rear seating position in the process, turning this Born from a quintuplet to a quadruplet seating situation, so to speak. Or, in layperson speak, a 4-seater only proposition. Righto, let's see what's under the bonnet of the Born. No engine. In fact, the electric motor even isn't here because it's over the rear axle, because this car uses Volkswagen's MEB all-electric architecture, and it's shared with the coming ID3 as well. Essentially then, we're talking about a skateboard platform with that electric motor delivering 170 kilowatts of power and 310 newton meters of torque, and all to the rear wheels. Though it weighs in and around 2 tons, the Born can bolt to 100 kilometers an hour in 7 seconds flat and needs just 2.8 seconds to hit 50 k's an hour, handy for zipping in and out of traffic. Like the Volkswagen ID3, the Born suspension consists of McPherson-style struts up front and a multi-link rear end to keep things all calm and collected. But it boasts unique motor, steering and suspension tuning, with the wick turned up ever so slightly for a more athletic on-brand experience. That said, the two cousins even come down the same production line in Germany. Like all Cupras, think of the Born as an electric VW, but in a somewhat saucier and spicier sort of way. Now this car is about the size of a Golf, maybe a little bit smaller. It's a monospace design, it's very modern, it's angular, it's glassy. It says I'm an electric car and I'm an electric car from Germany. It's very well proportioned, clean styling, a pert rear end. All in all, this is a handsome car, and if you're in the market for something like an Ioniq 5 or a Kia EV6, well, it's a bit smaller, but then it's probably a bit more practical for urban use. Either way, I think Cupra has really nailed the design. But does the Born drive nearly as well as it looks? It's about time we jump in to find out. G'day. Welcome to the first drive and interior assessment of the Cupra Born. I'm very excited because this is actually my first interaction with the Volkswagen MEB platform vehicle, and of course it's the first in Australia to have that. So let's go. First impressions. It's generally as you'd expect a modern Volkswagen to be, particularly if you're used to the latest Golf and that sort of thing. However, you kind of have to familiarize yourself with what's going on. Now, space-wise, I kind of expected this car to be a little bit larger inside, maybe more akin to a Golf. And while it is technically a C-segment car, to me it seems like maybe somewhere between a Polo and a Golf in size terms. So that is a little bit surprising. It's not a bad thing, it's just more compact than I expected. Righto, digital instrumentation, as you'd expect, a wacky gear lever, which is this twist action satellite binnacle base thing down here. So we'll put it in drive, and we are good to go. Just before we do though, it's worth quickly pointing out the sports seats, which keep you nicely snug, as well as the good driving position, attractive steering wheel, effective ventilation and plentiful storage. And out back, even sat high behind my own driving position, there's ample legroom as well as headroom for my 178cm frame. Plus, the backrest is comfy, the headrests are soft and pillowy, and somebody's clearly thought about USB outlets and useful door bins. Throw in a handy 385 litre cargo capacity and it's obvious the Born can also cut it as a smaller family car. On the other hand, the 12-inch multimedia system can be downright flummoxing to figure out. The slide controls for heating and cooling are fiddly, some of the plastics aren't of a quality you'd expect from a Volkswagen Group product, and you won't find a spare wheel anywhere, just a tyre repair kit. Most of that though is soon forgotten from the moment you gently flex your right foot down to experience the electric drive. Note that this car, flown out from Spain just for us to sample, is riding on the 20-inch wheel and adaptive damper setup that costs a little bit more. Okay, now we're off. We're in comfort mode, and as you'd expect, it's near silent, smooth and lovely. We're driving around the Haunted Hills track, and though the surface is slick, especially as it's rained, or it is raining, there's also funny cambers to throw you off, so that's definitely something to be wary of. And it immediately shows up this car's chassis as being one that is planted, and it feels taut and controlled. Now, the Cupra Born, of course, is rear-wheel drive. It has a rear-mounted motor, but thanks to the sticky Michelin tyres fitted to this car, it doesn't seem at all overbalanced or a handful, even in these wet and slippery conditions. The steering's beautifully weighted, it's precise, it has a linear feel going through this corner, and the brakes don't feel too grabby in that electric car way. Now, this Cupra, like most modern EVs, has regenerative braking mode that slows you down. It doesn't bring you to a full stop, so it's not a one-pedal driving experience. However, when you do operate it, and you do it by twisting the drive button from D to B, It does provide some level of braking. It slows you down. You can do a single pedal braking when you get used to it, but it's not like, say, a Hyundai Ioniq or Kia EV6 situation, or Kia Niro for that matter. I'm driving a bit harder. I love this car's poise, actually. It feels controlled and it's confidence building, and yet if you want to, you can kick the tail out a bit, just a little bit, as you can probably sense. This is a lot of fun. Okay, so the verdict. Is this a hot hatch EV? Well, Cupra has tuned the steering and the engine response certainly to be on the sporty side, and around here the smooth track flatters the suspension, so the ride comfort is really good. So that's a bit hard to tell, but around here, in terms of cornering, handling, and steering response, yeah, it's pretty sporty. I'm going to hold off by calling this an out-and-out hot hatch, but compared to most other EVs I've driven, this is really at the pointy end of being sporty and involving. I like it very much. It's a promising start, and I can't wait to get this car out on Australian public roads. So stay tuned for that. What we have here, folks, is a small car with a big package. Offering a sizable 77 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery underneath, the Born's WLTP range is a deal-making 511 kilometers. Great for the out-of-town blasts that are constant allure for most hot hatch owners. Now, we don't have full Australian information pertaining to charging a Born just yet, but overseas data suggests that the average mild weather energy consumption is around 15 to 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That's the good news. The bad news is, as with all big battery EVs, it might take a while longer to recharge a Born. Plugged in at home, using a 10 amp regular socket, it might take more than 40 hours, but investing in a wall box for around $2,000 extra slashes that down to between 8 and 12 hours depending on output. Away from home, find a 50 kilowatt DC fast charger, and that should need no more than 70 minutes from empty to full, or under half that using a rare 150 kilowatt super fast charger. AC charging is via a Type 2 port with an 11 kilowatt capacity, while DC fast charging is via a CCS2 port with up to 170 kilowatt capability. Finally, regenerative braking, offering some level of single pedal deceleration that also helps recharge the battery a bit, is also part of the Born's identity. Yep, I went there. I've waited the whole video to say that. There's no one else here in this space. And you know what? That sums up the Cupra Born, our first impression anyway. So, does the Cupra Born deliver on the promise of Australia's first ever EV hot hatch? It's hard to tell. We have to get it on Australian public roads to find out. But judging from our first impression, this is a very promising start. You can read my full review at carsguide.com.au, and as always, thanks for watching.